Hey guys, welcome back to Cretaceous Cast. Sorry it's been a bit. I've been rather busy lately and putting a lot of thought and reading into this video, and I've also been scripting some other videos for the future on this channel so that I can have a more consistent upload schedule because I have a lot of trouble with that. But today's subject is something that I've always been interested in, and that would be the texture of my all-time favorite dinosaur, T-Rex. And I'm sure a lot of other people find the subject very interesting, judging by the most recent news that came out a couple weeks ago. Not until recently did I completely believe that T-Rex had feathers, but finding out as to how important ancestral traits are, I started to realize that it is indeed very likely that this animal had feathers. In fact, it made me think that it's very likely that all Tyrannosaurs had feather coatings of some sort. However, this paper that I will put in the description below has made me think that Tyrannosaurs weren't as heavily feathered like it is sometimes shown in the paleo community. The T-Rex skin integuments covered in this paper were found from the neck, hip, and tail. All of these were rather small, but rather widespread over the body, if you ask me. The other integuments described were from other tyrannosaurs, such as Albertosaurus, Daspletosaurus, Gorgosaurus, and Tarbosaurus. These impressions came from around the thorax, abdomen, and tail. So here's a really good image made by Joshua Balze. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name. Which shows all of these different imprints on a generic tyrannosaur. It gives you a pretty good idea as to how sparse these imprints are. Although, remember folks to keep in mind that these impressions are from different genera of tyrannosaurs. So you cannot use this data to suggest that T-Rex alone as a species did not have any feathers whatsoever. In fact, not all of these are true scales. Some of the impressions, like under the tail, are reticula, the type of scales that you will see under an emu's leg, for example. But some impressions are just bumpy skin. Who's to say that some of the body isn't covered in feathers? If you strip the feathers off of some birds, they have bumpy skin as well. It's likely that these tyrannosaurs were dead before these integuments were preserved, and tufts of fuzz shed off of their skin. This article also argues that the loss of feathers had to do with heat regulation due to gigantism. If an animal is incredibly large, it helps with circulating heat around its body. An animal such as Tyrannosaurus may not need feathers due to its size. Yes, Tyrannosaurus was big and feathered, but T-Rex specifically was a full 10 feet longer, although many other Tyrannosaurs close to T-Rex, such as Albertosaurus, were very similar in size to Tyrannosaurus, so that's not that great of an argument. Feathers, however, aren't necessarily just used for heat insulation, but they can help reflect heat as well, as in the case with emus. The scaly parts on birds also serve for heat regulation as well, so maybe being largely covered in scales could help a theropod with keeping a regular body temperature. How it's looking with all of these different impressions is that if these tyrannosaurs were feathered, most likely be around the backs of these animals. The article itself never explicitly stated that T-Rex or its relatives were entirely scaly. It actually admitted that it could just possibly have been a little feathered around the areas I just mentioned before. Something fascinating that this paper mentions is that the Horseshoe Canyon Formation bears both known to be feathered ornithomimids as well as Albertosaurus remains. My question is that if we found any evidence of ornithomimid dinosaurs having feathers from this formation from, say, impressions, how come it hasn't been the same case with Albertosaurus? My other question is whether or not feathers are that important when it comes to the Tyrannosaur family tree. All of the known tyrannosaurs that are known to have feathers like Guanlong, Dilong, and Tyrannosaurus are very high on the tree, and much older than dinosaurs like Albertosaurus, Gorgosaurus, and T-Rex, which evolved near the end of the Cretaceous period, while the oldest ancestor, Guanlong, evolved during the late Jurassic, tens of millions of years earlier. Who is to say whether or not they lost the feather trait that their ancestors had over all those eons? Then again, it's possible that they did have feathers, just not that great of an amount. Thank you very much for watching, and leave a comment if you have any more ideas to add that I left out. I'm on the constant search for new knowledge.